Hello everyone, it is 4:30 p.m. Central Time. It is Wednesday. It means it's time for office hours here on the Academy. As you probably can see, I'm alone today. Andrew is a little bit under the weather today, so I am on my own today. But nonetheless, this is where you can learn about updates in the MDT, ConfigMgr, and Intune landscape, and also where you can get your questions answered. So without further ado, I figured I could start by sharing some of the updates since last week, where we sent the office hours from the MMS conference in Minneapolis, which, by the way, was a fantastic conference, always is. A ton of stuff, and if you have a chance to go, I highly recommend signing up for the Flamingo edition. That is in October in Fort Lauderdale this fall. Even though that's like a smaller version of the conference, it's still a absolutely great conference. So highly recommend it. But on that note, let's dive into the updates here. See if I can get my screen shared. And I'm also going to bring up the chat window so I have a chance to see your questions at the same time. Trying a bit of multitasking. I know it is pushing the limits, but I'll try my best here. All right, there is the chat, and here we should have my screen. I'm gonna adjust it a little bit. There we go. So, for example, for those of you that like to write PowerShell scripts or use PowerShell script a bunch, you might have seen that the PowerShell org started to post videos from their latest conference. So if you are interested in a deep dive on PowerShell, there is a lot of content being added in this channel, basically as we speak, because the last update was like a few hours ago here. So highly recommend that. Then we are finally back to do in-person events for our Chicago user group. We call it the Far Midwest user group because that's technically where we are on the map. But long story short, on June 6th, we will be at the Microsoft office down in Downers Grove, which is just quite a stone throw from Chicago City, but still at the suburb to Chicago here. So if you live in the area and want to learn a little bit more about the Cloud Journey, migrating from AD to Entra, and a little bit of an endpoint privilege management deep dive, as well as security and Intune deep dive for Microsoft, please join us. It's spending an afternoon in the Microsoft office. So hope to see you there for those that live around here. Then we have our friends up more than a stone throw from here, and that is up in Seattle. They are having a user group meeting on Friday. I believe it is. Yeah, Friday. So May 17th. If you are in that area, please join that one. I attended myself back in March. It's a great venue, great conference as well. Or great user group as well. So please go to that one. And finally, we have our friends in Arizona. They are also having user group meeting on Friday. So it's Mike Terrell and others managing this user group. So by all means, go ahead and attend that one. Also, a little bit of tips and tricks from the MMS conference, together with some regular sessions as well. Then I stumbled across and And it was actually Andrew who sent that link development to me in an email. So Andrew is with us in spirit here, even though he couldn't join in person, so to speak, or during the call. It's this one here. A nice little review of the Intune Cookbook that Andrew Taylor put together. So always a good read. Then I could not but laugh because Gary Block, he posted a picture from a device that had a few partitions too many, put it that way. I've never seen anything alike, but apparently this was a device, came from an OEM, and it had a few partitions in it. In general, more than 4 is overkill, but this must be, I don't know, 20-some partitions in this one. But I thought it was funny. And speaking of funny, this week the Academy is have a distinguished guest, and that is Richard Hicks doing his certificates class. And I was editing the videos last night from the recordings, and I stumbled across this slide here, and I think that is like the best explanation ever to use certificates. They may not be too fun to work with, and they can be challengers to work with, but indeed, I totally agree with Richard there. So, good stuff. And finally, here is a friend from our Finnish MVP, Pano. A friendly reminder that from discussion he had at the MMS conference, that if you have an Intune license, you typically do have a ConfigMgr license. So don't forget that, because there could be use cases where you want to have a ConfigMgr machine around, even if you're all in Intune as an organization. We had a discussion on Twitter earlier this week. Okay, how do you guys deal with really large applications if you want to deploy them quickly? Yeah, that could very well be a scenario to keep ConfigMgr around, because that is one of ConfigMgr's fortes, to be able to do that very quickly. Sure enough, Intune can deploy large applications too, but I wouldn't say they are very quick to do it that way. They can be sped up by having a local cache server, and as of right now, ConfigMgr cache servers are the only one that are released, at least for normal companies, not ISPs, that can cache content also for Intune applications. And of course, if you're using other features like software metering and whatnot, you can still use ConfigMgr for that. So that was all that I had in the news. So let's see what questions may have come in. Well, I had a good morning from Marcos. Well, I'm not sure what time zone you're in, but it's 4 p.m. in the afternoon here. But indeed, good afternoon, good morning, sir, to you as well. And thank you for the welcome back comments that I see there. Then there was a question regarding a command line to setup, the compat scan only setup. So let me see. Nial wrote a post about that back in 2014 on what used to be called TechNet at the time. And then TechNet was discontinued, and they migrated some of those posts over, not all unfortunately, but some of them to the new community hub. So you can see it was first published here, but it's now in the tech community. But this is basically the compat scan only, and it forces setup to do an upgrade without doing an upgrade. It runs through the compatibility database process. And the question was, okay, how can I analyze this down the road or after running it? Before showing that, though, I just want to mention that this particular command line here, this is the equivalent of going to a, well, let's see if I can connect to my site server here. If you have an upgrade sequence, like this one, if you select this checkbox here, that will be the same thing as providing those scan-only switches. So I have that in my validation sequences that I push out before doing an upgrade. I have an upgrade assessment where I'm running upgrade, but again, I'm doing it without starting the upgrade. And this is the equivalent to the scan-only switch. So since this is a regular setup, you troubleshoot it in the same way you troubleshoot setup. You view the result the same way you view the result from setup. And that would be setup.log. So if you have that log file from a compatibility scan, you can either view it yourself, or you can use the good old setup.diag tool, SETUP.EXE, to parse that file. ConfigMgr has some basic reporting as well from the upgrade experience indicators, etc., but you will get much more details by parsing that log file. So basically, you will go to a folder where you have those log files from running that setup with those switches, and you will have a folder structure that looks, something like this, where you have the setup backlog file. And you also have the compat data XML files that can also provide some visual information about the upgrade. So I hope that answered the question. So let's see. There was another question. This was from Noah on YouTube. See if I can see the first part of the question. I basically want to have a text saying how to troubleshoot this. I was looking at my software update this morning. Patch Tuesdays are fun, yes. And over half of my clients are in an unknown state for most updates. First time this have happened. I haven't had a chance to review any compliance reports from software updates this time around. Usually unknown means that the clients either haven't reported in yet, or that there are maybe some issues with the summarization process or something on the server side. Is this related to ConfigMgr, or is this software updates from Intune? ConfigMgr. Yeah, it's not something I've seen for the May updates. If anyone happens to stumble across it, please let me know, but I haven't had a chance to work on that anything. This week was basically much recovery week from everything that was pulled forward from the MMS conference. Can probably look something up until next week, but might be a little bit too late if you're troubleshooting updates. But I'll make a note of it nonetheless, and see if I can find something. All right. There was a comment from Michael over in YouTube. The comment was, do you guys have a discount for veterans for your courses? We do offer a 10% discount on our courses and masterclasses for nonprofit organizations, and veterans or other similar organizations definitely fall into that category. So reach out to us, let us know, and we'll be happy to provide you with that discount code for that. So that we have. Ebrima is asking, let's see. I don't get that question, Ebrima. Can you possibly rephrase it a little bit? It's a question about third-party ADR instead of Defender, or how they can coexist. The ADR is native to ConfigMgr. Or is the question possibly about third-party updates? For third-party updates in ConfigMgr, I leverage PatchMyPC, because when you work with that platform, you have a publisher. And in that publisher, you select all the ConfigMgr applications you wanted to create, and also what ConfigMgr updates or applications you want to have it to create updates for. And this takes care of publishing them into ConfigMgr. So you don't have to worry about any ADRs for that. In my environment, I only use automatic deployment rules for the native updates in ConfigMgr, Microsoft updates. So I have my different deployment rules here for ADRs. This one was created by the publisher. I did not create this one myself. Yeah, and again, some follow-up comment. How do we live without PatchMyPC? And PatchMyPC is amazing. Yeah, can only agree. It's a great solution. It's not free, but for the money you pay, it's downright fantastic. It's $4 or $5 per year per device, and just creating a handful of those applications will cost more than dealing with all that stuff, because it's time-consuming to figure out all the command line switches and whatnot for applications. All right. Any other questions? Still have a good half hour to go at least. All right, Kurt is asking here on YouTube, can you recommend a way to add devices to Intune after they have been added to Entra but timed out? I was looking at the device enroller.exe with some command line switches there. There are some scheduled tasks on the client that you can run to trigger or re-trigger an enrollment. Or if they have been enrolled, you can try leave and join again using the dsregcmd command. I think there is a force repair also option available. I haven't seen the one timed out specifically. I mean, you always have the option of just enrolling them manually if it's only a few devices. Otherwise, finding that scheduled task and run it will be a good option. Let's see if I can find something quickly on that. I don't have the name on top of my head. Well, maybe this information here can be helpful. No, thank you. But this one here, this one has some references to that process. And yeah, I'll make sure to put this link in the collection of links that we share after the event here. Hopefully that can help you out a little bit, Kurt, there with the question you had. All right, there was another question from Noah here. I have an app within Intune for an iPhone that I pushed out, tried a few times and it failed. Bad certificate, fixed the cert, but I cannot figure out how to trigger the install again, stuck on failed. I have absolutely no idea. And I'm not planning on learning it either. I do not work with mobile devices, don't plan to work on mobile devices. Or phones, I mean, not PCs that I work with all the time. So unfortunately, I don't know. iPhone and Android is not something that I've managed with Intune. Would recommend pinging the Cloudway folks on Twitter, see if they have an idea, because they work with that, but I don't, unfortunately. Let's see. Another question coming in on YouTube. Do you have any experience in CI/CD? I wonder if that's supposed to be baseline type workload for MDT, like storing the XML files in Git and let's see here. Yeah, basically some sort of DevOps approach to dealing with MDT components. The only one for automation I have worked with is this PowerShell, because every time you do something in MDT, no matter what that is, from creating an offline media, this question was about an offline media or ISOs, but it could be importing a sequence, or it could be even creating a folder, whatever you do in the workbench. So if I go to a good old MDT console here, where I have a deployment share, and I want to create a new folder here, demo. In the end of that wizard, there is a view script button that will show you the PowerShell command from the MDT PowerShell module that was used to create that folder. So basically that's what I would start working with if I needed to automate things related to configurations here. I have not tried to integrate that with any sort of GitHub repository, but obviously you can use that for your scripts and store them there, but you can even invoke scripts from that. But I would start there. Maybe not the answer you were looking for, but that's where I would start to automate things around MDT at the moment. Let's see. Another question on YouTube. Thoughts on using group policy for enrollment versus co-management auto-enrollment. If a client exists and use a group policy, is the end result still ConfigMgr? Have folks that wants us to use group policy. I like ConfigMgr handling it. So my recommendation in general is to use group policy for that auto enrollment. And we're talking hybrid here, when you have devices that are joined to a Windows Active Directory first, and then you want them enrolled in Entra. I definitely recommend to use the group policy approach for that. The only time you are more or less forced, and I can show that policy here, I showed it last week, but this one is the one for auto enrollment. The only reason there to use ConfigMgr is if you don't have licenses for the regular type Intune client that you may want to use. There is a scenario where you can ask ConfigMgr to do a full enrollment of devices through configuration in the cloud attached component. So basically here, it will open in a week. So this is where you can have either a pilot set of devices or every single device trying to enrollment. And ConfigMgr also creates a collection for you where it will populate with devices it believes can be used or that are eligible for enrollment. So if you search for or check the documentation link here, it will tell you about these scenarios and what the requirements are, etc. So my personal favorites, group policies when I can, and when I cannot, I use ConfigMgr for it. All right, let's see. Dan, welcome back, Dan, by the way. was answering Scott's and Noah's question regarding the iOS app. Basically asked Noah to make sure your iOS app assignment was set to device and not user for the question it had. So hopefully that can help. Then there was a follow-up comment to the MDT automation. That was basically on version control of offline ISO file. If you script the process, you can definitely apply versioning to the naming of the ISO file that generates, and you can keep an archive of those. So that would be doable, because the ISO files that are here for media, you can just generate more of them. And each media property will have a name of an ISO file that you can configure. And this is all part of the XML files in the control folder for the media here. And that you can edit through PowerShell also. And you don't even need to create new media. You can just go in and change this value to the next version. So that would work. I'm not sure if this one here is written into the media. I think this is just visible in the UI. But this obviously is part of the name in the media. Technically, you can add in extra files. You can put in a folder here to add like a version text file into the media. So when you open the ISO file, you will see the version there. So maybe something like that could be helpful to keep version control of your different media. ConfigMgr is a little bit better that way, because it allows you to put basically a date stamp, a best before date on media. And if you try to use an older media, it will warn you and say, hey, this is too old. All right. Then there was a question from Amir. It was on YouTube. During MDT sequences, some devices boot back into WinPE instead of Windows after the OS has been deployed in the first place. I have read that that's an issue with Windows 11 22H2. We are using 23H2 and it works for others. I have not seen that for any version of Windows 11. The only time we had a problem similar to that was when we were developing PSD, because Microsoft made some changes in the way that bootloaders are written. So we added in, we changed a bit of code. Let's see if I can figure out which part that was. Must have been in the apply script. Yeah, we had to add in that one for it to correctly to boot up into Windows in some scenarios. Otherwise, it would either try to boot back to the ISO or USB if you boot from USB, or PXE if you were booting from PXE. And I remember seeing something on a support page from Dell regarding this. I wonder if you can find something. Nope. yeah, this was it. This was the original line in MDT, and I changed it to this line that includes the /C. Even though this was done in an A443, wonder if that's the case still in 8456. Let me search for this in a more recent MDT one here. Not sure what Notepad++ is up to today. But all right, let's do it this way. Yeah. So even 8456 still has this one here. So I would try to change this to a /C instead, like that article showcased, and see if that takes care of it. So I'll make sure to put this link in the chat as well. But basically what I searched for was Dell and BCD boot and MDT, and that was the first article that came up. And there are some other reference to similar issues. So maybe that. All right. Follow-up question to the enrollment question earlier. If you use group policy to enroll a device that have a ConfigMgr client install, it is still co-managed. Yes, ConfigMgr will still show it as co-managed. I think I still have a few devices that I did a regular hybrid join of and then let the group policy enroll. Let me see here. Yeah, they are turned off for the moment, so they are not compliant. It's really hard to be compliant if the devices are actually not running. But they were hybrid joined. They were not enrolled by ConfigMgr. They were enrolled through policy, and they do show up as co-managed here. So yes, would be the answer to that one. Let's see. There was a follow-up comment on MDT offline media. Do you know if there's a way of changing the default media name when burning the USB? Well, when converting the USB ISO to USB through Rufus. I haven't tried, but in general, you can set a label on the media on the different tools that can create. But I haven't tried. I have not seen an option in the MDT to change anything for it. Another option is to not use a conversion tool, but just do PowerShell, mount the ISO, copy the content to the USB stick and make it active. You don't have to use a tool to convert an ISO file. I have an example here I'll be using for when I needed to edit ISO files quickly, for example, to enable certain features in an ISO file. I would downright just extract it, mount the content of WIM file, and mount the WIM file, make the changes, and then generate a new ISO file. But I don't have to generate an ISO file. I can just copy the content over to USB stick also. So certainly doable. All right. Also, another follow-up comment regarding the enrollment group policy. Do you prefer the default system or set up user credentials? I've only used it with system, so that will obviously be what I've been preferred to use. And there was a time you couldn't even pick. So yeah, I've been using that one. Or I guess it's device it sets in the drop down there. Great questions. And we still have 17 more minutes to go. And any other questions? For those that joined late and happen to be in the Chicago area, friendly reminder that, good Lord, that link did not work out very well. Let's see if I can get a direct link. That's what you get for using TweetDeck. Here we go. If you happen to be in Chicago, please join us on June 6th for an in-person user group meeting, our first one in a good while. We used to do them quite frequently before all the COVID mess, but haven't done much since. So I'm very excited to start back doing these in-person events. We used to do them a few times every year, but June 6th, that will be the time to book in Downers Grove. Most folks that live in the Chicago metro area, it's quite easy to get to that location. It's not too far from the city either. All right. Well, I do not see any other questions at the moment. Give it a minute or so. See some follow-up comment regarding the enrollment question from earlier. basically a thought about the primary user could conflict with device system enrollment. Nothing that I have stumbled across, but at the same time, there are a few things that surprises me in IT anymore. I have not seen the target the primary user affect the actual enrollment itself of the device. Was a comment here or question coming up on YouTube. How is the MDT PowerShell project coming along? What was it called again? It's called PSD, and it's been doing quite well. We made some changes last week that we haven't yet published, but it looks kind of nice these days. I'm a bit biased, but if you go to github.com and go to Friends of MDT, this is where you have that. And it's an extension of MDT. It's a PowerShell extension to MDT. So we took the MDT scripts. So what you normally will find in the deployment share here with a bunch of regular scripts, if you go to one that has been extended, it looks, well, very much differently, because it's just a bunch of PowerShell scripts instead. We recently made some changes to our wizard. I actually have time to show that just because it's fun. So if I go to a clean ISO there and power on this device, we should be able to see those changes. Give this some time to boot and see if that server decides to reply. So this is the initial background screen. It typically changes a little bit later in the process, depending on settings. So give this some time to connect. Yeah, so this is the wizard in PSD. You can see it kind of looks and feels like the MDT wizard, but this one is written completely in PowerShell. So no executables, just PowerShell. So you pick your sequence, you pick your disk drive that you want to use. This is something we added that MDT doesn't have by default, but we wanted to have it specified, especially if you have devices with multiple hard drives. Some information about the device. We added in a device role that you can pick from. We added in so you can select an Intune group for autopilot assignments, admin credentials, local time, any applications you might want to have, and then a summary, and then from there on, it's just a regular task sequence. So start the deployment, and it will, run the task sequence. So these were some of the changes that will be published shortly into the GitHub repository. But all in all, it works beautiful for bare metal deployment. We did a session about this at MMS, me and Andrew Johnson and Michael Nystrom. Michael Nystrom's company, who is a security company that deals with a lot of security incidents, he mentioned that they had deployed a good over 100,000 devices using PSD for different customers over the last few years here. So it's a quite well-tested platform. And since MDT is, well, it's not supported for Windows 11, even though it happens to work, this could very well be something to look into also down the road. All right. Gary Block just sneaked in, I saw here on Twitter, thanking for the presentation at MMS. Appreciate that, Gary. Yours was good as well. And I hope to convince you to do a community course for us at some point on the Academy here. So we'll get back to you on that. Gary also mentioned you want to borrow some of that beautiful GUI code for OC Cloud. Well, it is open source, so as long as you follow the MIT license that we're using, basically you can use it as long as you remember where it came from, you're good to go. So steal with pride. Stealing with pride, I guess is the word. All right, let's see. That was a question from Amir regarding the Update-MGDevice API in MSGRAPH, and the MSGRAPH module has a limitation regarding application-only scenarios for non-Windows devices. The app can only update the extension attributes property. Or the module can only update that property. It's not something I have tested, so I don't know about that one. For most, if it's Win32 apps that you're trying to modify or update, I've been using Nikolai Anderson's PowerShell module for it. Or if it was for updating a device itself, I would have to look into that. I don't remember that from the top of my head. Another question regarding macOS devices. How can we update them using scripts if the Update-MGDevice won't work? I also have no idea about that one. I can ask Dean. He is our macOS guru at the Academy, but I have not played around with macOS management at all. Let's see. Diego is asking on YouTube. Apparently trying to deploy a TeamViewer version through Intune. What is your recommended way to remove the old version? I do not know from the top of my head. I'm assuming some sort of scrubbing script will do the work if needed. If there is not a good uninstaller that you can leverage, but I haven't tried. I don't know. If anyone not listening haven't played around with doing Intune installations of TeamViewer, removing older versions in part of that process, please let me know or give a comment in the chat and I'll share it. But otherwise, I don't know. There were some follow-up comments regarding the device update. Module or function. I'll see what I can find out next week on that one. Will be good homework, if any. We haven't updated all our scripts yet to use the new graph modules. We upgraded most of them, but not all of them. And those of you who just listen in, the question was basically around changes into the Update-MGDevice commandlet, but I haven't had a chance to play around much with that one. All right. Any other questions? I wonder how old that commandlet is. Anyhow, I'll check it out. Can only think of that might be an older module, no longer in use. We'll see. We'll see. But all right, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A here. So thank you everyone for joining today. Hope to see you back next Wednesday, 4:30 p.m. Central Time. Have a great rest of your week every day. Bye for now.